Fantastic. So, once again, thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be discussing the topic of alternative proteins. As we all become increasingly aware of the climate impact relating to animal proteins and the land and the water required to produce it on the scale at which we all consume it, it's becoming increasingly clearer that for us to sustainably feed ourselves for the long term, we need access to more sustainable or alternative proteins. So, just as a bit of a definition, alternative proteins relate to any protein which has been produced from plants, from animal cells, or by fermentation, giving us the protein that we need, hopefully, for a much reduced environmental cost. And it's been a hugely fast growing market, which I'm sure you will have all noticed with the amount of meat alternatives that are now available on the supermarket shelves. There have been some high profile IPOs in the sector for companies like Beyond Meat. And even for pretty much all fast food chains now are starting to get in on the action and offering plant-based alternatives. And it continues to grow as we now even start look at replacing animal feed with alternative proteins to cut down our environmental impact at that side of the food chain as well. And in fact, Boston Consulting Group estimate that the alternative protein market is going to be worth over $290 billion by 2035. So a fast growing and really exciting sector to be in. And today we're going to hear from two fantastic speakers who are going to share their career journeys with us about how they got into the sector, the work that their company is doing, and the skills that their organisations need to help them continue growing and innovating. So first, we're going to hear from Sam Prudence. Sam is a senior scientist in strain engineering from Better Dairy. Based in Hackney, Better Dairy are using precision fermentation to produce the same cheeses, yogurts, and ice creams that we all love, but without having to use the animals. So for me personally, that's an absolute dream. And John Hayes, the VP of Commercial from Deep Branch. Deep Branch are using clean energy to create sustainable ingredients. And their first product is a single cell protein called Proton, which is used for animal feed. So Sam addressing how we feed ourselves and John addressing how we feed our livestock and our animals, so coming at it from both sides. So should be really interesting. Without any further ado, Sam, do you want to take the floor? Oh, and unmute.
Yep, sorry. Yep, great. Thank you for that. I will just share my screen. Cool, is that all okay?
It's just kicking in. Hold on. It says you've started screen sharing, but it's not showing just yet. Oh, there we go.
Yep, great. Perfect. Thank you. So, yeah, my name is Sam Prudence. I'm a senior scientist at Better Dairy working in strain engineering. And as you just heard, our goal is to make animal-free dairy that's kind of the same as the dairy we already enjoy. So I'll just start by going over the background of kind of how we intend to do this. So cheese obviously is made from milk from cows, and there's three main components to milk, which are the fats, the sugars, and the protein. The protein is the component of milk which gives cheese all of its kind of gooiness, its texture, its flavor. So that's the most kind of important aspect of milk. The fats and the sugars can be interchangeable with plant-based alternatives. So our goal is to teach microorganisms how to make that key protein from cheese, which is the kind of pinpoint of the flavor and the texture of the cheese. And if we can teach those microorganisms to make that protein, then we can make the protein without involving animals. So the kind of workflow, I guess, for the organization. So people like me in strain engineering are working on teaching those microorganisms how to make that protein. There's then a precision fermentation process to synthesize that at scale. That's purified and then used to make cheese, along with plant-based sugars and fats. So that's the kind of overall concept for Better Dairy. So I'll just go through a little bit about kind of where we came from and how this started. So the company was founded by our CEO, Jevon, in 2020. And in the early days, it was kind of based in West London in the shipping containers, which you can see here in the pictures on the left. These kind of quite small labs. And then we fast forward to 2022. The company received a significant kind of Series A cash injection and was able to move to a brand new facility in East London. We've got kind of brand new office space. We've been building out our laboratories for next year, so we have very new facilities with lots of great capacity. And the team's increased to 25, and we're still bringing people in, and the team's still growing. So it's been a really kind of fun ride for that past year or so. And we've been able to bring in, for example, PhD students on internships to help contribute to the work we're doing and to give them an experience of what it's like to work in this sector. And we have access to things like a gym, and there's a social committee and lots of events and things like that. So it's a fun place to work. And that's the kind of, I guess, background of how we are, or how we've gotten to where we are today. So the team itself is a very kind of global team, lots of people from lots of different backgrounds. And the one thing that kind of unites everyone, I guess, within that team is the goal of making sustainable, great tasting, animal-free cheese. That's the kind of uniting concept. So I'll just go through a little bit about those backgrounds. So there's quite a range of people in the organization. So on the science side, even, there's quite a lot of diversity. So there's people like me who work in strain engineering, from a kind of biology background, people working in precision fermentation and analytical chemistry. But then, you know, quite far removed from that, there's also people working in food science and cheese making, which, you know, were sides of the science that were kind of quite novel to me as I came into this organization. And it kind of underpins the broad range of skills that are necessary to make an idea like this happen. On the kind of business side of things, there's people working in regulation and in partnerships and in financing and operations. And then the kind of intersection, I guess, between those two arms of the business is product design and manufacturing, which kind of branches those two areas. So this is just, I guess, a summary, which might be useful for some of you to see the very broad range of skill sets that are required in a business like this to make the idea of great tasting animal-free cheese happen. So how did I end up here? I'll just go through a little bit about my career background. So
I'm sorry, Sam, are you clicking through the slides? Because I see only one slide.
Oh, I have been, yes. Sorry, is it not? Are you on the first slide? Oh,
yes.
Okay, I'm not sure why that's happening. Sorry, let me try re-sharing the screen. Can you see that now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, sorry, I'm not sure why that happened. Okay, I'll just reiterate the key points from some of those as I go through. That's okay. So this slide was the kind of overall background of the company's kind of workflow. So as I was saying, we're kind of teaching these microorganisms to make that key protein from milk, which makes cheese have all of its flavor and its texture. There's a fermentation process to synthesize that at scale that's purified and then used to make great tasting animal-free cheese. So we started off in 2020 in these shipping containers in West London. So you can see some kind of images of how that was. And it was quite a small team. 2022, there was a cash injection to the company. And we moved to these offices in Hackney Wick, and you can see the kind of size of the team now. And we're able to do things like bring in PhD students on internships. So we have these kind of brand new facilities we built out in the last year or so. And this slide is kind of underpinning the kind of global nature of our team. Lots of people with lots of different backgrounds from all over the world, working in both the research and development side of the organization, but also the kind of corporate and operations side. So this slide is going over the kind of overall kind of set of backgrounds we have in the organization, on the science side and on the kind of corporate side as well. Yeah, so I won't go through the details again, but yeah, and then my journey for getting to this organization. So I started off in Norwich at the Norwich Research Park. So I did my undergraduate at the University of East Anglia. And during my degree, I had the opportunity to participate in the iGEM project, which kind of really opened me up to synthetic biology and the idea that we can use biology to do good in the world, which then has ultimately led me to where I am now. But kind of in between that, my PhD is what kind of introduced me to working on food systems and making food systems sustainable for the future, because my PhD was related to how microorganisms are able to help crops grow and be healthy. But there's some key things I managed to do during my PhD, which I think enabled me to make that transition from the kind of academic science to the startup environment that I'm working in now. So, for example, I was able to lead a couple of committees, one of which we were building a kind of website resource for researchers to help them work on the organism we were working on. There was some quite niche and techniques, and we kind of spent a few months building a website to have all those resources available. So that kind of really introduced me to the kind of project management side of things, which is important for this business. I was also leading a committee called E3I, which is effectively a group of PhD students which are responsible for coming up with training for other PhD students to help diversify the skill set outside of academia. So we did some really fun stuff like media training and graphic design work. It was a really great thing to be a part of, and it kind of was a nice vessel, I guess, to think about how to diversify my skill set and how to build the skills you need for working in a scientific environment, but one that's outside of academia. And one of the key components of that, kind of outlined by engaging with the Norwich Science Festival, is communicating the research to non-scientific audiences. So, there's not everyone in our organization is a scientist. We've got to be able to talk to each other and understand what's going on. So those kind of skills are really important for that. So then I moved to London. I was on a postdoc for a few months, but I think the thing that I'm really passionate about is contributing kind of very quickly and very directly to building technology which is going to enable us to have more sustainable food systems, which Better Dairy is directly doing. So I then transitioned to working here in strain engineering, helping to teach the microorganisms how to make those key proteins we need to make great tasting animal-free cheese. So I guess, why was I brought in? Well, the main component obviously is I had the core scientific skill set which qualified me for the role. But it's important to highlight there's a couple of other things which I've kind of tried to highlight through some of the other experience I had during my PhD that really help make me effective in this environment. For example, things like leadership and communication and project planning, and also just the cultural fit and the motivations, right? Like, I'm very motivated to make food systems more sustainable and accessible to everybody. So that's a goal that everyone here shares, and it's something that you need to make sure your goals are aligned with the organization you're working with. So yeah, thanks for listening. We are hiring. There's a few roles available, so you're welcome to check out the links if any of you are potentially interested in anything we have going on. We're looking for cheese makers, we're looking for scientists, and also people to work in kind of manufacturing, project management, etc. So yeah, thank you for listening, and happy to chat to anyone in the breakout rooms.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam, for sharing that. I particularly enjoyed you talking about the E3I Club and what you were doing there. I think that's a fantastic initiative to help people transition out of academia into commercial life. And also at the end there, highlighting those 3 reasons that Better Dairy hired you. And I think it's true, you can take that out of Better Dairy right and into any organization, into any sector, that it's those 3 things. It's the technical skills to do the job, great communication skills, but then also that value and mission alignment, which I think it's really important. Perfect. Thank you so much. And John Hayes from Deep Branch is now going to share his story with us. John, do you want to share your screen?
Hi, can you hear me there?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, all right, good. I'm not familiar exactly with all the Zoom controls. It seems to always upgrade from me. So no, thanks very much for hosting and having me here. Pleasure to be with you. I'll try and keep it brief to try and claw back some time here. My name is John Hayes. I'm the VP of commercial and sales, but we don't have sales yet. So it was a free title that they were giving out with Deep Branch. I'll get into a little bit before that. Better maybe kind of spend a little bit of time on myself. If I can change the slide number. Is it changing for you guys? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. If you can't tell, I'm not British. I'm American. I started life out on the other side of the pond from probably where a lot of the audience members are, presumably today. Um, and moved around a little bit as part of my childhood. So it was a bit of a fuzzy start, and I had gotten a bit of advice that if I wanted to do anything in this world and I wanted to know anything about business, I should go into accounting. And so that was kind of where I start. I started out my accounting degree, and I found very quickly I did not like it, but it was still pretty useful. And so I decided to double major with accounting and international business, and that fortunately opened up a number of doors by being able to go abroad. And I caught the travel bug pretty early on, and was able to spend some time in Europe and traveling around Europe, and more or less growing as a person, not necessarily specifically educational or professionally. And I thought that was really want to highlight that, because I think it's also an important element into your development and your career journey is not just solely about the technical skills, but also the personal skills as well. You know, when I graduated, I rolled into the aftermath of the global financial crisis. So it was a fun time trying to get a job thereafter. It's not like the job market today. So I had a couple of jobs in between, but I ended up going abroad for a job that I had happened to do my international internship with, which was BayWa AG. They are a agricultural commodity and energy conglomerate in Germany. And so I was able to join the team there, and quickly got poached by the M&A team. So I was doing some international deal making. And got a very good broad exposure to international environment, to cultural norms, to legal contracts, and all the fun stuff. I progressed pretty well there, and was able to get into an opportunity to transfer internally within the company to a sister company, or internally within the group. And that's really where I sort of furthered on my skills into really the food and feed sector. And that's kind of really what started me down the path into kind of where we are today with novel proteins. Is part of my remit was looking at strategy, products, and operational elements. And novel proteins sort of in 2016, 2017 were starting to become a topic of discussion. I think Oatly was probably making its first splash in terms of oat milk lattes and whatnot, which was a great product differentiation. And so it forced the company and forced me then to start looking at alternative proteins and alternative ingredients into what could potentially undercut our flows and trade flows. And yeah, we were able to successfully accomplish a lot of the goals that we had been setting. And as I was progressing, I was finding more stability in my life. And I think one of the things that I had experienced is when everything gets stable, you kind of get an itch to go do something new. I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced that. And so that's really where I started thinking about, you know, my journey wants to be more than just an internal corporate cog kind of at the end of the day. So I took that corporate toolkit and ended up joining with Deep Branch. I've been on the team now for about 10 months. I'm responsible for a lot of the high-level commercial negotiations and things. So that involves a lot of partnership building, both on the downstream and the upstream. It requires looking at the macro picture and the economics picture, and as well as building out sort of that longer term strategy and longer term relationships really for the company. You know, in total, it's not something I had planned to, much like my Sam here. It was something that was more opportunistic. That came really out of a need to kind of do more with what I had been experienced and exposed to. I'll try and skip through a lot of the background for the company. I think Sam did a pretty good job of explaining at least a little bit of the industry. Biotech's been around for 10,000 years. We know it with beer, we know it with cheese, we know it with a number of different things, different single cell organisms, whether that's yeast or bacteria, can alter products and create new flavor profiles or even isolate ingredients. About 100 years ago or so, we really started being able to develop technologies to isolate ingredients. whether that's antibiotics, whether that's ethanol, whether that's vitamins. You know, a lot of that's done through fermentation, and that was really all based really around sugar-based fermentation, glucose being the main molecule coming in. About 1980s, I'd say 1980s, about 1970s, there was some work done from NASA and looking at sort of space travel and whatnot, and then they were looking at other bacteria that happen to consist or subsist rather on not just glucose but also direct molecules such as hydrogen, oxygen, and CO2, and that's really kind of, you know, where our roots start, not that far back, but at least the ideas and concept. And really in you know, really within the last probably 10 years or so, there's been more of an effort to push to look at syngas fermentation as a way of developing new products. And, you know, it's a way of decoupling from the agricultural land. It's a way of providing a sustainable circularity within it. And, you know, certainly with hydrogen prices, those were definitely prohibitive. But obviously with this push to decarbonize and the efforts to look at other forms of energy and energy transport, hydrogen definitely becomes a very interesting component in terms of a longer term structural society component. And that's the realm that we sort of play in. So we have we've developed, or we were able to isolate rather a microbe that has a relatively high protein density. And you know, that was kind of really the idea and the foundation for the company. And you know, that's really the challenge and the track that we're on right now. The company was founded about 5 years ago. You know, with basically a lab and a couple of microbiologists who started it, and it's been a journey of trying to scale up that technology from, you know, a lab to a lab in a box and moving that around, trying to prove the technology works at source. And now we're currently building out a pilot vessel, a pilot bioreactor to be able to produce, you know, roughly about 2 tons a year per annum. And then from there, it will be about a scale up journey, trying to get upwards of, you know, potentially up to 150,000 tons for a commercial facility. So that's the track that we're on. Certainly from a product standpoint, we're looking at the initial level of a microbial biomass, you know, Proton, that's our flagship product that we're developing. But, you know, once we're able to figure out the right applications in the right markets, it's about really then looking at other potential technology solutions that we could look for. So looking at the further industrial bio fermentation industrial complex that we could potentially look at and tackle. I kind of wanted to focus today on, or at least the prompt that I got was really sort of what are the skills and the skill sets that we're looking for. I think the skills and skill sets that are required really for the you know, for this sort of industry and this scope will really kind of depend upon the roles and the roles itself, and those are more or less those toolkits that are required for that are more or less transitionary, you know, not just specific really to sustainability, but they might be other microbiology toolkits that might be applied in different sectors. You know, the real challenge, I think, for us to find, and probably the one it's probably plays a bigger element in hiring is really the soft skills. Sam definitely talked about this and mentioned it. You know, communication, being empathetic are probably fundamental to having a good team player and having and building a good team. And that is something that I think the industry, you know, I think that's a skill set that's not trained up well enough. I say trained up well enough, but you know, it's something that definitely slips. People go based on the toolkit of the raw things that are needed, but communication, empathy, team player, being proactive is another element that we've found as being somebody who wants to challenge, wants to take on challenges. That's a core soft skill that is definitely in need. being able to think beyond just the task at hand and think about the bigger implications from the request. I was chatting with one of our engineers, and they said somebody who's happy to do modeling in Python and at the same time swipe the floor the same day. Really being able to just be versatile. I think having that versatility will get you into many more doors, and subsequently, from there you'll be able to choose a bit more of what you want to do at the end of it. But I'll keep it there. We can go into the dynamics behind those core bits and those roles, or myself, as you see fit. So happy to take it on in the breakout sessions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John, for sharing that with us. And really nice to hear a journey, one from somebody that's come through the sort of scientific path to get into this sector, and then another somebody that's come through a commercial finance and commercial path to also come into the sector. So it just shows that there are roles for everybody in the space as it continues to grow. So thank you both for sharing those. And again, I really like that point was echoed there again about needing that blend between the technical skills and the soft skills. And perhaps, people might have some questions in the breakout rooms about how they can best prepare themselves for that and display that and, whatever else during their job applications and interviews and things.